I was walking down the hall earlier tonight in this building, and I was feeling kind of achy. And I realized I need to stretch more. I feel sore, and I need to stretch some more.
Well, when you spend 5+ hours straight at the desk.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome back to the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast. I'm Josh, here with Greg.
Hello.
Daniel.
Hello.
And Marcus.
All right.
Playing hurt already this season.
Apparently
Trying to gut it out.
Yeah, Marcus McConaughey over there.
Yes.
Minister of Telegram Sports Culture.
I think that's going to be an interesting course. Yeah, I think I just have some allergies going on. That's
all right, well, we'll see.
Hopefully.
We'll see how the rest of us feel tomorrow after sitting here with you tonight.
That'll be the real test.
We're back for week 2, everybody, of the high school football season. Week 1 was interesting, to say the least. Some teams had a really tough Thursday or Friday. Other teams looked great. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that. A little Temple, some Belton, some Holland and Mart in the 2A game of the week.
Big time.
Some Academy Salado, and more. And speaking of more, here are the matchups for this week. We have Temple hosting the team from Monterrey, Mexico.
Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León.
Yes.
Los Tigres.
Sí.
Auténticos.
I will point to you anytime we need to hear that tonight.
Will never be pronounced better than right there.
Yes.
Muchas gracias, Daniel.
Enchiladas.
Round Rock at Belton, Maynard at Coppers Cove, Round Rock Stony Point at Harker Heights, Colleen Shoemaker at Midlothian. And Shoemaker, by the way, the only team in District 12-6A to win last week.
Go Grey
The other 8
Wolves.
teams, not so much.
Yep.
Robinson is at Gatesville, Lampasas at Lago Vista, Academy at Salado, Florence at Gerald, Caldwell at Brockdale, Troy at Lexington, Rogers at Bruce Valetti, Holland at Mart, Thrall at Moody, Chilton at Rosebud Lot, Bartlett at Dawson, Frost at Granger, Buckholz is playing at Richland Springs JV team, and Fort Worth Lake Country is at Central Texas Christian. And also Saturday non-district game, Holy Trinity Catholic at Bryant St. Joseph. Idle this week, Cameron Young.
Yo.
And speaking of teams that had good weeks and teams that did not have good weeks, 10 of our 19 teams, area teams, lost last week. Temple, Belton, Gatesville, Salado, Academy, Gerald, Moody, Rosebud Lot, Bartlett, and Buckholz. Holy Trinity didn't play. Teams that are 1-0 going into week 2. Yo, Troy, Rockdale, Rogers, Bruceville, Eddy, Holland, Granger, and CTCS. So it was pretty. It was an interesting week, like I said. But let's start with Temple, which, despite turning the ball over 5 times for the first half, was still within a touchdown.
Don't short him. It was
Late
actually
game.
6 times.
Okay, 6 times. So
Let's get the number right here.
But still within a touchdown in their loss to Round Rock Cedar Ridge. But obviously, a lot to work on going into this second game.
Yeah, there is. I mean, it was interesting that really you could turn the ball over that many times and still Marcus with the background music there.
I told you Marcus is playing her.
It's hard enough to concentrate on this as it is.
I don't even know where that came from.
But yeah, I mean, it's obvious, any coach is going to tell you you can't afford to turn the ball over that many times. At home, on the road, against a good team, bad team, mediocre team, and this happened to be on the road against a pretty darn good team. And it's to Temple's credit that they summoned a better effort in the second half, and had the ball with 2 minutes left and down 6, could have driven down for the winning touchdown. Didn't quite work out that way, but there's a ton to work on really in all facets of the game. I mean, their offense was. Couldn't hold on to the ball. Did have some big plays. Samari Howard, the sophomore running back, was a bright spot. He rushed for 254 yards and a touchdown with Anthony Jackson out of action because of a hamstring injury. Quentin Johnston, the great receiver, was basically shadowed all night, double covered, triple covered. Did catch a long touchdown pass later in the game, but that's what the blueprint's going to be against him this whole year, you would think. Temple's defense, starting 2 freshmen, a sophomore, and a lot of first-year starters. With the exception of about 5 plays, played pretty well. But those 5 other plays were big. Screen pass for a touchdown, long touchdown pass, along with giving up a 97-yard kickoff return on special teams and having some bad snaps that cost them field goals, extra points, whatever. So, it had to be a real tough day of film study Saturday morning at Temple to identify all the mistakes and then go about trying to correct them going into the home opener against Nuevo León on Friday night.
Well, you mentioned a tough film session on Saturday morning for Temple. I don't think Belton's was much more enjoyable either. The Tigers knew they were going in and facing a really good Austin Westlake team, and the Chaparrals beat the Tigers 48-0. When you look at it, a couple ways. First, from Belton's perspective, devil's advocate or whatever you want to call it. Okay, Belton's offense only 135 yards. They couldn't get anything going through the air, on the ground. It was not what they were expecting to do. Defensively, they give up 535 yards. Now, again, that they probably had one of the tougher week 1 area matchups, I think, going against Westlake. But,
whereas last year they came out of that game probably feeling semi-good.
Much better. But no one got hurt, really. You can only really go up from there. Belton's defense gave up, or Westlake converted 7 of 12 on 3rd down, 3 of 4 on 4th down, and Belton's defense couldn't get off the field, and then they weren't helped by the offense, which was hardly on the field most of the night. So Saturday probably wasn't great to look at, but like Temple, they're going to make some adjustments coming out Friday night against Round Rock, a team that they've defeated the last 3 years. There was one close game 3 years ago. I think it was a 7-point game, and the others have been double-digit victories for the Tigers. But, Round Rock, I don't think they're coming in lay down against Belton, so it'll be another tough test.
They're always a pretty good team.
Oh yeah,
they always end up getting better as the season goes on. They usually find their way into the playoffs.
I think they were 3 rounds deep last year, maybe, or 2 years ago, area finalists last year. But they got a really good receiver in Cullen Sullivan, 6'4", 200 pounds, I think, had 183 yards received.
He's a Division I recruit, isn't he?
Yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah, Dragons beat Harker Heights last week. So this is not an easy test for Belton in its home opener, or an easy game, easy opponent, whatever. 0-2 is not going to feel great going into week 1 of District 12 6A. So it's too early to say it's a must-win, but they definitely need to show better than they did last week, and I'm sure Temple's feeling the same way.
I was going to say one more thing about that Temple matchup is, this team they're playing, Nuevo León, this is a team that always comes through Texas and plays quite a few games in early season. They're playing, they played a San Antonio private school last week, lost 33-21. Apparently they've got good size this year, and Temple's a little concerned about because Temple's lines are not as big as they were last year, especially on defense. So they're like, maybe it's a closer physical matchup this year, and these guys, they look good in uniform. They do things a little differently. Being, they're not from Texas, so they're going to try a few wrinkles and things to make you a little uncomfortable. But last year Temple got up 36-0 by halftime. It'd be surprising if it was that much of a runaway just based on Temple having so many new faces. But one thing people are going to want to go check out, though, is the new lights at Wildcat Stadium. Apparently it's going to be a much different, brighter look, and they've been using those same light bulbs since like 1965, and they're finally in the new millennium here, and apparently they want to show them off and hopefully play good underneath them.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what it says about 12-6A this year. Last week's results with Shoemaker, they handled San Angelo Central pretty good. It was a pretty impressive victory for Shoemaker, just based on where the Grey Wolves have been the last couple of years.
On the road too, wasn't it?
On the road, yeah. But the other 8 teams losing. I think Midway was only a 6-point loss to U.S. Trinity, but
that's the thing about this district. Everybody's kind of starting up strong. You look at Waco, that's kind of the one that's a head scratcher, playing University and losing to them. But University's obviously a team on the rise, but Waco.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Marcus?
University is a team on the rise.
We got you on tape saying that.
You
Right.
heard it here first.
But that's Waco still should have beat them. That's the one head scratcher in that district. I mean, this district's going to play some tough teams just to get ready for each other. And I mean, it's kind of like in Josh's feature story for the tab. Getting beyond that first round of playoffs. And they're going to have to do that. Get ready for a tough district right away because district starts in 2 weeks basically. So.
I think it shows also that the district might be wide open. I know coaches kind of say that every year, but it might actually be true this year. Some teams obviously grow better into the season, and others kind of stay stagnant. But I think for Temple and Belton this week, they're showing improvements across the board is going to be key for them moving forward. I don't think you want to stay in a slow start for much longer than this week. I mean, Belton's going to play at Copper's Cove in the first week of district, and Temple's at Heights?
At Heights,
So, I mean...
Which wasn't blown out by Round Rock. That was a one-touchdown game. And,
right.
Yeah,
so both of our big school teams probably need to get in gear this week to get some momentum going into 12-6A.
Belton with a little side benefit getting to scout, as they look at film of Round Rock, getting to also look at Harker Heights on film. That's a little side bonus they probably want to try to take advantage of, getting another look at those guys.
It might be like it was last year, too. Belton follows Temple in district, so Temple plays Harker Heights in week 3, Belton plays them in week 4, and so on. But I'm not sure how that goes.
I think last year that was definitely an advantage for Belton. We'll see if it's as much of one this year.
Right. Well, moving on to some of our other area schools, I think we should start with that Holland Mark game. That's kind of the one that everyone's talking about this week. Not just us, but kind of everyone. It's early in the season, but pretty big matchup for Holland, especially. Holland and Mark both coming off blowout victories in week 1. I think both teams rushed for more than 400 yards in their respective games. But Daniel, I think you're going to be out there, and you're probably going to be in store, see something pretty special.
Yeah, and it probably won't be a empty press box, to say the least. Seems like there's going to be a lot of coverage out there, TV, print, you name it, they'll be out there, because it's a big game, and it's a game that Holland's head coach, Brad Talbert, has really looked forward to for a long time, over the past...
Since the last time they played them, probably.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, I mean, over the past, 3 or 4 years, when Holland's really kind of made this turn to, steadily become one of the top 2A programs, at least in the area, it's a test that he's really kind of been eager to see how his players adjust to. So you kind of have the culmination of all of these seniors now on this team that have, all this playoff experience now, and really kind of gets put to the test against Mark. You got Mark that's 2-time now, back-to-back state champions the past 2 years. So definitely not an easy task. We're currently ranked number 1, I believe. So we'll see what happens. What was that last matchup? What was the score on that? Anyone know?
I think it was maybe 30-something to 7.
30.
It was pretty one-sided. Maybe not a total blowout, but it was fairly thorough.
But I mean, like you said, not a blowout. So I mean, Holland, another year of experience, just another year of hopefully not getting intimidated by Mark, because I mean, you face a program like that, very easy to do. So
anybody who tuned in and watched their state championship game, it was basically over before the first quarter was over. I mean, that's how dominant they were against the team that had won 5 playoff games. So I mean, Mark can put it on you if you let them. They're very big, strong, fast, athletic, well-coached, experienced, all that stuff. So
right, but Holland's got a lot of good stuff on their side too. I mean, you did the preview story on them for the tab, so the talent returning and a lot of senior leadership, a lot of playoff experience. Brad Talbert just continues to build a very strong program over there, and it'll just be another test to see where this program is at when it comes to the elite programs across the state, and we'll see what happens. But it could definitely be, I think we talked about it last week, it could definitely be a early matchup of maybe a third round matchup of the playoffs or whatnot, if both squads get that far or whatnot.
Well, I think Mark's Division 2, right?
Right,
So, but I mean,
but anyway,
I mean, it basically Now I don't know. Remember we were talking about Mason could be like a third round opponent, but I think they got whipped last week by Wall.
Yeah.
So maybe Mason isn't the machine that.
But I mean, during the regular season, a two-way matchup between Division I and Division II teams, it's not really. There's not a lot of difference as far as the high level. But I'm not really sure what it means. But for Holland, I think they have to stay within themselves, right, and kind of do what they do. You hear that all the time from coaches and players, but I think that's. I don't know what it means exactly, but I think that might be a key for Holland. I mean, just go in there, kind of trust what you do, and not get too overwhelmed with what's going on around you as far as Mark's concerned. I mean, it's a regular season game. It's a non-district game that we don't have to, that won't affect them going forward as far as qualifying for the playoffs or whatever. So they got to keep that in mind and just kind of go out there and play.
This kind of reminds me of several years back, like when Temple played Westlake in non-district. It's like on the surface the game doesn't really mean anything, but it kind of means everything at the time.
Yeah,
because
it's a good measuring stick.
If you can win, I mean, Sam Ellinger, he was the Westlake quarterback, and I think Temple, lost a shootout game down there and lost a fairly close game here. So I mean, they definitely make you better just by taking on the great opponent. You're going to get that no matter what. And I think a good measuring stick for Holland here is have a chance to win in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
that would be success. And then if you can actually pull it off, it's obviously a great win. But you want to be in that game in the fourth quarter, and that's going to be a winning experience regardless. But
and it'll be interesting to see how Holland comes out in that game. A week after playing Moody, opening the season with the Bearcats. No disrespect, but Moody is no mark by any means. So it'll be interesting to see, how prepared they are going into that game. Talbert's going to have them prepared, obviously, but just such the change in, competition level, really something you always have to keep your eye on. You never know how these teams are going to respond to, the level of play and whatnot. So you always hear coaches talk about that. You don't want your squad to ever play to your opponent. You always want to play at the same level. So if Holland can come out strong and then, like you said, Greg, give themselves a chance in that fourth quarter, anything's possible.
Sure.
And the other side of that, too, if Mark does jump ahead early, can Holland kind of sustain it and keep it manageable and work itself back into the game? I mean, that's another response that would probably go a long way this season, too, is if you can overcome an early deficit or something, keep yourselves in it and give yourselves a chance late.
And that's kind of where that, senior leadership, those playoff games experience comes into play.
I don't know how many kids Mark plays both ways. I know Holland plays quite a few both ways.
I noticed a few looking on some of the stats.
Conditioning when it's still this hot.
I also noticed Mark's fairly young this year as well. It looked like they had played a lot of sophomores last week. In fact, I don't think anyone above that grade caught a pass. Every one of their receivers was a sophomore. So, but they still won quite handily over Bosqueville.
So it's either they're that young or they're that good.
Right. Yes.
or a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I was looking at their roster last year compared to this year, and really they didn't lose a lot of seniors last year. So I'm thinking maybe a lot of those sophomores probably saw some significant time last year as freshmen as well.
Mark kind of reminds me of like the old Bartlett teams, that just had like more athletes than it looked like they really deserved for that level of size of town and school.
Those were some awesome Bartlett teams.
Bartlett's still waiting for those guys to come back.
Yes.
Aren't we all?
I think the other game we're going to be at this week, aside from those three, is the Academy at Salado game Friday night. Both teams coming off losses, close losses, games that Academy was beating Rogers for a time, not one last Thursday, and Salado also had a lead, I believe, at one point in the second half against Troy. Both teams ended up losing, both are going to be looking to even their records, obviously, this week. Salado christening its new turf field, which Academy will do the following week, I believe, when it plays its first home game. B's also got some turf. But this week, they're on the road.
Yeah, I don't know how that turf field kind of plays into what Salado likes to do. They're going to obviously run the ball, because week one they had 0 yards passing. And I'm kind of interested to see what Academy does this week, because I think last week they were more focused obviously when you play Rogers, you're focused on trying to beat them when you're Academy. But I think the coaching staff really wanted to get a judge of who their quarterback was going to be. And so they threw the ball a lot, I think. And so, because they wanted to offer both kids an opportunity, and they may still do that this week. But if they've settled on somebody, they may be more of a balanced attack, run the ball, pass the ball type. And I don't know, it's just going to be interesting to see that. I don't know too much about their game plan, what they did last week, other than use both quarterbacks, throw the ball type of deal. And
Danny, you saw both of these teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw Academy and Salado, and and that's absolutely right, Marcus. Coming into the season, Academy head coach Paul Williams, he said, they're in another quarterback battle, second year in a row. It's between Jerry Cephas, the junior, and Colin Mraz, the sophomore, I believe. And both.
I think he might be a junior.
Might be a junior.
Yeah, I think
okay.
He's a junior. Yeah.
Okay. The Academy native, Greg Willie over there. No.
Blasphemy.
But that's exactly right. They're in a position battle. Paul Williams wants to give them both plenty of reps, plenty of opportunities. They both looked really solid. I would probably give the edge to Jerry Cephas. Colin Mraz had a couple of interceptions there, but Jerry Cephas is also the incumbent there at quarterback, so a little more experience.
Pretty good runner too.
Yeah, both are good athletes. Yeah. They're both able to, if the pocket collapses, they're able to make some plays with their legs. But again, just for the time being, Cephas probably has the edge just because he has more experience. But Colin Mraz looked pretty comfortable for the most part. They're going to pass more this year than they have in the past few years. But kind of like you said, Marcus, I imagine once they settle on a quarterback, which last year, didn't come till about the middle of the season. But Paul Williams said it's going to be a quick decision. So if we do see kind of the back and forth this week, this might be the last week, because he said, definitely within those first few weeks of the season, he's going to make a decision. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's probably definitely why you saw a lot of passes when they played Rogers last week.
Yeah, I think I know Salado kind of struggled last year, but one of their strong points I thought last year in the few games I've watched them was kind of their secondary. So they might actually match up well against this Academy team if the Academy is going to throw the ball. And yeah, Cephas was, their top passer and their pass rusher last year, 100 yards rushing, 12 carries, and threw the ball for 222 yards, 11 of 20. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, that quarterback battle. And it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out, if Academy can stop Salado's rushing attack, if Salado can stop Academy's passing attack.
Yeah. And offense wasn't really the problem last week for Academy.
No.
So scored 45. You kind of think we should probably win this game and still lose by 10. So
that's the issue.
Yeah.
Because Salado's going to run at him, and Rogers, they've traditionally been a running team. They do throw a little bit more than Salado, obviously. I think everybody throws a little bit more than Salado will. But Rogers runs the ball well. That's what they did against Academy. And if Salado can't stop the run, if Academy can't stop the run, they're going to have fits against Salado.
Yeah.
Where can Salado improve this week, Jenny? You saw them against Troy. They gave up a couple big running plays. Where do they struggle, and where do you think they might make some adjustments?
Definitely in their defensive line. They're solid, and it's kind of hard to gauge that because Troy's offensive line and their running game is just so good. Especially right out of the gate there, Zach Hrabachik's a stud. That offensive line has a ton of seniors, a ton of size for 3A. So that's definitely a force to go up with, no matter who you are. So it's kind of hard to figure out where they are. But yeah, the Salado defense gave up a couple of 75-yard running touchdowns. So that's definitely something to be concerned about. Their rushing attack on offense was solid. They've got those three guys. I think each one of them had at least 80 yards. One of them was close to 100 yards, and we'll kind of go over stats here in a little bit. But they just ran the ball like Salado does, and they had a chance to win that game against Troy. Troy has a solid defense, but there in the final couple of minutes, Salado was able to take the ball I think about 90 yards. They just needed 5 more yards there in the final seconds before they had a fumble, and then Troy recovered the fumble, took it all the way back to kind of ice the game there. But Troy is, they're no pushover. No one's surprised by Troy this year, and to see Salado have a chance, everyone keeps talking about how Salado keeps rebuilding. They already showed signs that they were better in this first week than they were last year. So if they can keep on improving, definitely a solid game against Troy there, and definitely a positive to continue to build on.
Yeah, like you said, we'll get to some stats here in a second and close out the podcast with that. But any other games this week, or going back to last week, wins that kind of stand out to anyone here before we get to those stats? I mean, I thought, Bruce Valetti with their new head coach putting up 40 points in a win last week, that was pretty impressive. I mean, I don't know.
I thought Rockdale whipping Giddings
was
pretty good.
Yeah.
Because that's a bigger classification opponent coming off like an 11-win season with a lot of guys back, and Rockdale took it to him pretty good.
And I think Giddings beat Rockdale last year too, right?
By a point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Granger over Snook.
Yeah.
That's a few people thought Snook might.
Yeah.
Yours truly.
Yes. Yeah.
Go Granger.
Yeah, that's good start for Granger for sure. And what Rogers did to come back from a double-digit deficit and score offensively, defensively, and on special teams, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Marcus, I'm wondering, I see you were out in Milam County last Friday night. What was the feeling like at Yo Field after the first quarter when the Yeomen were down 14-0 against the Mejia Black Cats? What was going on?
I want to keep this kind of family friendly, so I can repeat some of the words that were being said, like in the press box and in the stands you could hear. But there was kind of a little bit of some nerves being, tested a little bit. But I think as we've learned, Milam County boys don't really panic. I mean, we saw that from Rockdale, their state championship game down. What was it, 21-0, and midway through the second quarter, dominating. And that's kind of what Yo did. I mean, once they got it going, it was classic Yo. I mean, there were some mistakes. It just took. The big problem there was the Yeomen were not tackling. I mean, they were just trying to hit guys, make them knock down. And Mejia's not the type of team that's going to do that. They're going to bounce back. And I'm pretty sure in this off week they were probably focused on tackling and wrapping up because that was their biggest issue. But I mean, once the offense got going, they did what we've all seen the Yeomen do, just kind of a few yards here, a few yards there, then deep pass. A few yards here, a few yards there, deep pass. And break open a 64-yard run, 86-yard run, things like that.
Well, I kind of feel like that was the issue that they had 2 years ago. They come into the season number 1 ranked. Everyone's got their eyes on Cameron Yo, like normal. And they just kind of thought, if they get down in a game or they fall behind, that they've got the talent or they've got the time to be able to make it up. And sometimes that's the case, as in week 1, but that's definitely not a formula you want to execute every single week. And I'm sure that's what Coach Tommy Brashear was preaching this week, along with tackling. So it'll be interesting to see how they get out of the gates come week 3, especially coming off of this idle week.
Looking at the box score, Cameron Yo, 61 offensive snaps, 0 turnovers for a season opener. That's pretty stout.
Yeah.
Considering that certain teams struggled with turnovers last week.
Yeah.
Not naming any names.
Ball security.
Mejia's turned the ball over 3 times, which ultimately was kind of the key. Yeah. I mean, a late fumble near the end of the first half kind of got the ball going for Yo, and then 2 interceptions by the same kid for the Yeomen in the second half kind of helped seal the game. And yeah, I mean, the Yeomen have some talented players out there, and they're going to make things happen. It's just once they start wrapping up, we could see this team potentially be a threat to go a long way in the playoffs. But if they don't start wrapping up, they might not even get out of district. So we'll see what happens.
Are they still feeding well at the Yo Field press box?
I'm not complaining a bit. I mean, you have your pulled pork sandwiches to start the game, and halftime pizza and wings. And,
got your ice cream?
There was ice cream, but I did not partake in the ice cream.
Are you sure the crowd wasn't angry just looking up into the press box and seeing you guys eating all that good food, and they were mad they couldn't get up there to get some of it?
Well, they know where the press box is. They know how to get into it.
It is no secret.
All right.
Daniel, take us home with some stats, please.
All right, roll call. So when you hear your name, please stand up. This week's rushing leaders for week 1. Nathan Quattlebaum out of Bruceville Eddy, 245 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Not a bad way to start the season. Temple's own Samari Howard in his varsity debut, 25 carries, 254 yards, and a touchdown.
Team captain.
Team captain, there you go. As a sophomore, that's pretty impressive. Zach Robotchik out of Troy, we already mentioned his name tonight. We'll probably mention it more as the season goes on. 213 yards, a pair of touchdowns. He also had a touchdown receiving in that game. Clay Cooper out of Holland, 194 yards, a pair of touchdowns. James DeBose out of Cameron Yo, 159 yards, a pair of scores. Charlie Hudson out of CTCS, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Carlos Reyna out of Granger, 137 yards and a touchdown. And then wrapping it up is Wesley Brown out of Gatesville, 13 carries, 133 yards on the ground, and a touchdown. So, not a bad way. All of those were more stats than I put up in week 1, so I can't complain. Moving on to your top passers for week 1. Jace Robinson out of Rockdale had a pretty stellar game, 13 of 22, 441 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Definitely not a bad way to start the season. Academy's Jerry Cephas, 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zane Spinn out of Holland, 211 yards and 2 touchdowns. We'll see if he can keep that up when they play Mark this week. Braden Brashear out of Cameron Yo, 211 yards as well with a touchdown. And then for Academy, Colin Mraz, 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Academy, pretty good numbers through the air this past week. Again, they're just trying to figure out who's going to be their quarterback there. And
I bet there's been some seasons where Academy barely passed for as many yards as those guys just did the other night.
Maybe just as recent as maybe 2 years ago when my first year.
400 plus yards combined by the two guys, about 400?
About maybe 370, 380. So my math is not great off the top of the head, but we'll go with that. And then your top receivers for week 1. Out of Bruceville Eddy, John Lopez, 4 catches for 144 yards and a touchdown. Braden Lilly out of Academy, he made his B debut in week 1, 139 yards and a touchdown. Ross Loth out of Rockdale, 132 yards and a score. Keyshawn Raven out of Rockdale, another good playmaker, 121 yards and a touchdown. Kobe Mitchell, another guy out of Rockdale, 111 yards and a touchdown. All these Rockdale guys, when you throw for 400 yards, you're going to have guys eat in this game. So, Zachorian Spikes out of Cameron Yo, 91 yards and a touchdown. Caleb Searley, is that correct? Curley. See, there you go. See, when I'm in Holland, I'm going to have to learn that correctly. 88 yards, no touchdowns for him, but hey, 88 yards, not bad at all. Quentin Johnston out of Temple, 4 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. And then wrapping it up, sophomore Jaden Simmons for Academy, 2 catches, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, not a bad ratio.
No, and this was not a bad podcast, so appreciate everyone listening. And we'll be back next week.
Read the paper.
Read the paper.